Hi, I'm Stephen Carrington with StevensGuitarLessons.com. Welcome to this week's edition of my Tip, Trick, or Lick of the Week series. Today we're going to be talking about hammer-ons and pull-offs, which are, in some respects, kind of opposite of each other, and in some respects not really. But the concept is kind of a one is moving up and the other is moving down. At least there's the opposite to it in that respect. But it's really a left-hand thing. The right hand is all it's really doing is laying back compared to a normal playing situation. It's really when the left hand is doing the enunciating of the note, the articulating of the note, instead of the right hand. Kind of similar to a slur or something like that that a wind instrument player might do, to where you wouldn't articulate the note, but you would change pitches. So it's something that is difficult for a keyboard player to do, but an electronic keyboard has some of them have a portamento effect, which is a similar kind of a concept, but that's more of a blur from one note to the next, which is a little bit more like a slur. That's generally what that tends to be. A hammer-on is more of a definite movement from one note to the next. But again, the right hand wouldn't pick the note. The left hand kind of pops onto the fretboard. The finger will hit the note at the fretboard with enough force to make the note ring out. And it's not a huge amount of force, but the real factor is not so much force as it is impact. You wanna pop it onto the string to make it vibrate. You should be able to do it from a non-vibrating string. Of course, it's really only going to occur in a practical situation from a ringing string, so you're already going to have a little bit of a benefit. But it could be from an open string or from a fretted string. From an open string, the approach is going to be kind of like this. I'm going to do this on the G, or I'll do this on the B on the 3rd fret, and we're going to do again open and then hammer onto the 3rd. If you don't move with enough velocity, you get more of a push rather than a pop, and that instead of making the string ring out from the impact, it mutes and deadens the string, and I'll demonstrate that. You can kind of hear it, just a little bit in there every once in a while, but for the most part, it really mutes it, and there's not enough motion, there's not enough impact. The analogy I like to use with a lot of my private students is that it's kind of like a lot of the martial arts, in that there's a definite stopping point for where the force is to impact. There's not a lot of follow-through like there is with something like a baseball bat, a baseball batter swing. There's going to be specifically follow-through with that, and the more follow-through with something like that, the better the impact is going to be. But with something like this, we don't want to have follow-through, because that's putting the point of impact really is not where it needs to be. If we have the point of impact be our focal point, we have a very articulated sounding note, but it's not. And there's some distinct advantages to that. We don't want it to sound like it's a slurred note necessarily, although hammer-ons do have a distinct sound. Sometimes that's not the entire reason that we're going for it, is the sound of the hammer-on. But again, we should be able to do that from a non-ringing string, and I'll demonstrate. It's not nearly as pronounced, of course, but I am hitting it with enough impact to make the string ring. And you don't want to hit too hard and again go through, because you don't want to be pressing against the string beyond where you need to have it to fret the string. You don't want to make it pitchy and get sharp from being pushed out of tune. Alright, now with a fretted note, it's really the same concept, but you're obviously, you want to make sure that you keep your originally fretted, the lower fretted finger down at least until the hammer-on has occurred. because obviously that string has to keep ringing until after the hammer-on has occurred. So you want to have it instead of to where I'm having to depend on the impact to make the string ring again. If we just keep the finger down, then we got a nice smooth transition. And that brings us to our next technique, the pull-off. The pull-off is kind of the opposite. We don't just lift off, because that's not going to give us the kind of ring that we need. We're really losing a lot of volume if we just lift off and do an opposite motion. What we really want to do is pull the finger that we're pulling off. We want to pull that kind of down towards the floor. And in doing so, we pick that string with the flesh on the tip of that finger. So again, we got to have that lower fretted finger already in place and already pressing down, so that when that finger pulls off, it picks the string and you can hear the lower fretted note. And again, we should be able to do this from a non-ringing string, but we're going to always be coming from a ringing string in most practical circumstances. And it's again a similar kind of different circumstance from a fretted note to an open string. You want to be really careful that you don't bend with this. It's very easy to give too much push, and you bend the string out of pitch. And again, we'll go sharp. It's always bad when you get everything a little bit sharp. Everything sounds very amateur. Now that you can intend to do that, and there's a place for that, but if you're not intending to do it, you don't want to do that. You want to be careful too that you don't end up with that index finger or whatever finger you're pulling off too is not bent underneath there as well. So you pull off and you've got a nice firm pitch where it needs to be. Now if we pull off from an open string, it's really easy to hit extra strings, and unless you're on the high E string, then you don't have to really worry about it. But if you're on anything other than the high E string, you have to be very careful not to, unless of course that's what you're intending to do. Most of the time you're probably not. So what I like to do is I like to just catch my finger on that next string. So I know when I hit that next string, nothing else is going to ring. But it's a fine adjustment that you have to make with your left hand. And it does take some practice. Now, one little thing I want to show you with these that you can really do to put hammer-ons and pull-offs together is a nice little fluttery sort of thing. And this is a very common technique that gets used a lot by a lot of well-known guitar players. It sounds very impressive, and it's not the easiest thing to play, but when you realize that it's just all hammer-ons and pull-offs, it does shed a little bit of light onto how to get these difficult-sounding licks. Alright, I'm going to be playing this in A minor pentatonic with the B and E strings on 5th fret, 1st position. So I'm going to be doing between 5 and 8 on these two strings, and I'm just going to be going back and forth, one string to the next, hammering on to 8, and then pulling off back to 5, and then going to the next string, and back and forth. When I do it really fast like this, it sounds quite impressive. Here we go. And see, I can let it ring out, I can keep it nice and tight. I did a couple of options there. Again, it sounds very impressive, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it is just a repeating pattern, and when used judiciously, it can be very effective, a nice lick to have in your toolbox. Alright, that's all the time that we have for this week's tip, trick, or lick of the week, and I hope to see you next week, and in the meantime I hope you'll check out my website, stevensguitarlessons.com, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks a lot. Hey, it's Steven. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it helpful, if it was something that was beneficial for you, I hope you'll go and check out my website, stevensguitarlessons.com, and that's stephenguitarlessons.com. You can find out all about my guitar lessons program there. and a lot about me as well. And if you found that it was too simple or too basic, it was covering topics that were too simple or too advanced, definitely check out some of my other videos. I do cover a range of skill levels and topics and concepts, and hopefully there's something there to your liking. If so, or if not, whatever, you can feel free to send me a message. You can contact me through the website, and I hope to hear from you, and I hope to see you again for my tip, trick, or lick of the week. Thanks a lot, and again, this is Steven from StevensGuitarLessons.com.